All right, welcome back. Our next speaker has gained a lot of experience in the monitoring world with lots of different positions. Currently, she is working for Vodafone Spain. So please welcome Alba Ferri.
Hello, hola, hi everyone. I gotta tell you that I'm super excited to be here. Not in my best dreams I would have dreamed to be giving a talk today. You'll see why in a bit. When I was talking with Bern in late June and he proposed me to give a talk for the open source monitoring conference, I freaked out. I was like, what in the world can I talk about that can interest you guys? I mean, I've only been in the monitoring world for a couple of years, and I'm sure most of you have spent a big part of your career working on monitoring. But then he gave me an idea, and after 30 minutes of thinking, I had a nice list of topics I could talk about. I was so happy. Nevertheless, when I read again that list, I realized that I was not going to talk about my work. I was going to talk about yours. I was going to talk about how much I learned of Icinga from the community. By the way, my name is Alba Ferri. I'm a network engineer, and I was the admin of one of the monitoring platforms Vodafone Spain uses to monitor. Oops. This is to monitor their systems, which happen to be Icinga. And I say I was because I changed works a couple of months ago. Now I'm the product manager of a small Spanish company called A3Sec that develops monitoring solutions. So who knows if I'll be talking about my product here next year. Okay, but this is my official presentation, but I would like to tell you a little bit more about me. I don't know if you're aware that network engineers may do not have any idea about systems, and that was exactly my case. I just happened to like Linux because I had a couple of old computers I wanted to give a second life. So 3 years ago, I had user-level understanding of Linux. But I guess I was in the right place at the right moment when my boss offered me to join the monitoring team, which I obviously accepted. So I ended up creating my first bash script in the summer of 2015. Go figure. Do you see what I think is kind of crazy for me to be here? Many open source communities or software solutions have a lack of feedback, especially from big companies. And Vodafone Spain is one of those big companies that uses Icinga. So I want this talk to be a feedback talk for the open source community to show you how important your contributions are. Do you remember that I just say that I joined the monitoring team? Well, that team became just me by the end of 2015. So at least in my case, again, it would have been impossible to do my work without your help. Okay, what am I going to talk about? First, I'll introduce you the monitoring platform we use at Vodafone. I'll show you what we monitor and how we monitor. Then I'll explain you the conventions I'm going to use through the talk. And then I'll show you the different use cases I bring. As an ISP, we have an IT architecture similar to this. A bunch of systems interconnecting with each other, filling up databases, doing backups, exposing all kinds of web services. It is an interesting ecosystem. For OSs, we have Windows, Red Hat, Solaris, Xen servers. We even have some HPUX servers. We use Dell chassis, EMC storage cabins. For virtualization, we have Citrix, VMware, Hyper-V. We use IBM MQ as our message technology, and we have Postgre, Oracle, Microsoft SQL, MySQL, and we use Visual Web Services. So we have a little bit of every system technology here. The monitoring team is inside the IT operations department, and you can guess what the other teams are. Citrix, Unix, Windows, backup, database, they all manage the infrastructure at the production environment. And of course, we have billing, CRM, business intelligence, provisioning. They all manage the applications at the production environment. Vodafone Spain has 2 main local data centers. So with Icinga, we monitor all the hosts and services that are there. As we migrated from Nagios to Icinga, we still use NRP and NS client agents inside the servers. But many of the latest monitoring check we've developed work more in the white box monitoring mode. We also do passive monitoring, so traps are integrated into Icinga like passive services. So the platform is formed by 7 servers. 2 of them are in the master zone, 4 of them are in the satellite zone, and the last one is for the standalone database. Even though we don't have a big infrastructure, we monitor around 1,000 hosts. 400 of them are Windows Server, and more than 500 are Unix-like servers, and the rest are cabins, appliances, or container hosts for passive services. These 1,000 hosts have around 20,000 services. Some of the hosts can have only 10 services, and others more than 100. When I was preparing the talk, I showed the presentation to a friend of mine who doesn't know much about Icinga. And so he was a little confused with the code sometimes. So I had to stop the presentation and explain him off the record how Icinga works. So he told me to use a small breakdown for better understanding. And being this the open source monitoring conference and not an Icinga event, I assume that most of you have worked with Icinga, but many, not all of you, so I hope it helps you understand the examples. From the moment of someone asking you for a new monitoring check to where you finally see it in Icinga Web, there are many steps in between. But I think the most important ones are these, at least in terms of doing stuff in Icinga. First, you need a script that will gather the information that you need. Then you have to define a check command that will call that script with the arguments needed. Then you have to define a service that it will call that check command and maybe pass variables that will be substituted into the arguments. And finally, the service gets into the host. Okay, now we are getting to the interesting part of the talk, right? All these use cases we are using for monitoring inside the Vodafone Spain monitoring platform. Some of them are more techy, some are just a story, but all of them have been important in my journey on learning about Icinga. First, I'll talk about VMware Active Monitoring. Then we'll see an implementation with the Icinga API. Then we'll talk about Icinga Web 2 theme. Then we'll talk about monitoring log files. The 5th one is Windows Console Certificate Monitoring Check. And the last one is Black Box Story. Okay, use case number 1, VMware Active Monitoring. Historically, we were monitoring VMware platform out of SNMP traps. Once the vCenter triggers a trap, it gets received by Icinga, and if it matches an SNMP TT config file, then it raises a change state into a passive services. I guess many of you were doing it the same way, maybe some time ago. The problem with passive services is that you don't know you have a problem until it's already there, so that is not very proactive. A year and some ago, Unix team had a project to upgrade vSphere version from 5 to 6. And inside the project, it was a training included. And I was lucky enough to get to the training. So I went there, and then I realized that really VMware platform is formed by a vCenter that manages the ESXi hosts that are the ones that really have the VMs and data stores and so on. Okay, and so I went to the course and it was pretty interesting, but of course there's always time for boredom. So one day I started searching in internet about monitoring VMware, and guess what I found? This cool blog post. Here, Martin Smedley explains with a lot of detail how to use check VMware ESX Perl script. And I thought that it was the good way to monitor VMware platform. So I follow all the steps in the blog. I install all those Perl modules. My God, what a pain. How many modules do you need to install to make that thing work? But it all went fine. So now is when the breakdown comes into play. You know, you can monitor many, many things with this script. I just brought a couple of examples of what we do in Vodafone. I wanted to monitor the list of ESXi hosts for a particular VM. So I was using the check VMware ESX Perl script. Then I had to define the check command that will call that script with the arguments needed. In this case, they were runtime and list host. And pay attention to the second line where it says import VMware ESX DC. One thing very cool about how Icinga works is that you can import other parts of code already defined. So in that check command definition is where you have in the arguments the IP address and the credentials needed to access vCenter. Then I had to define a service that will call that check command, and I pass the variable with a macro host.name of the vCenter. And in the last line, you have the assign rule. There is a great Icinga blog post from Gunnar Beutner called Avoiding Common Pitfalls when using apply rules that I wish I would have read before, because there you can see how powerful these apply rules can be. Okay, and finally, you have to add the variable to the host, so the service gets into the host. And here's the result. You can see all the different ESXi hosts that the vCenter app-SSB was managing. Okay, the second example, I wanted to list the VMs that were in a particular ESXi host. So again, I was using the same script. It has more than 600 lines, so 1,000. So you can do everything with this. So I needed to define the check command that will call the script with the arguments needed, in this case runtime and list VMs. And again, in the second line, you have the import VMware ESX SOAP host. That check command definition has in the arguments the name of the ESXi host that you are accessing. And at the same time, that check command also imports VMware ESX DC, the same that we were seeing before, that has the IP address and credentials to access the vCenter. Then I define the service, and I use the assign rule, and then I added that variable to the host definition. And here you can see the result. You have the list of VMs and its status that were in that particular ESXi host. Okay. Use case number 2, an integration with the Icinga API. I guess we were very good clients of VMware because we ended up having a vRealize suite. In case you don't know what it is, let me tell you very briefly. That is a software solution that helps you build and manage hybrid cloud. It is similar to OpenStack, but vRealize has the security layer implemented. There is a very cool video in the VMware YouTube channel called VMware vRealize and OpenStack, a side-by-side look that explains you all the differences. And so the Unix team created different VM templates that you could request, and then you were asked for how many virtual CPUs, RAM, storage, and how many days you wanted that machine to be on for you. And after some minutes, the machine was ready to use. So after some days playing with the vRealize solution, my Unix pal came and he asked me, did you say that I think I had an API? And I was like, yeah, I'm happy you mentioned it. That's one of the main reasons why I upgraded the platform last month. God, Michael, do you remember how many times I posted in the monitoring portal about upgrading? Everything went fine, but that day I ended up crying of happiness. But that's another story. Okay, well, vRealize has an orchestrator module that you can set different actions when requesting a template. And those actions can be whatever, Ansible playbooks, Puppet manifest, or just simple curl calls. So what he wanted was to be able to monitor in Icinga automatically the VMs created by the vRealize. So this time, I didn't have to do much in Icinga. I only had to create the API user for the vRealize server and then tell him the different curl calls he had to send. So here you have a short resume in the Icinga tool log with the curl calls from the vRealize server, creating and then deleting the host once the machine was destroyed. And well, this is just a machine created by the vRealize. I think it's super cool to be able to monitor things on runtime without restarting or reloading all the config, right? So I'm very happy. I'm in the open source monitoring conference, so I can find out what other software solutions work the same. Okay, use case number 3, Icinga Web 2 theme. When working in a big corporate, there are many chances that there is an inside marketing plan for employees to feel part of it. They may give you stickers with the name of the company, or maybe you have to use a mousepad with the logo, or they give you umbrellas or T-shirts. Well, you know what I'm talking about. So one day when I was going to log in into our Citrix portal, I realized that they have changed the look and feel. Now you could see a picture of our building with the colors of the company, and it looks so good. So then I remember about that Icinga blog post announcing the theming feature with the Christmas trees, the Christmas theme with the snowflakes flying all over the screen. I'm sure you can remember that. So I thought it would be a good idea to have my own Icinga Web theme. And I guess that day I was not in the mood of working much. I had some unknowns I had to investigate, but everything is working, right? So I started reading the documentation to create the theme, and it was not difficult at all. So you have to go to this path, and here you have a couple of files that create the login web page. So in my base.les, I added the different colors that I wanted to use. And in the login.les, I asked my Citrix pal if they would let me use the picture he took of the building, and I use it with different colors, and it looked this cool. But that is not the only thing you can change in Icinga Web. Remember, when you log in, you get the top banner in blue with the logo with Icinga. You can also change that. And for that, you need to go to this path and create your own theme file, which I did, Vodafone-s.les, and that creates the inside look and feel. So here, what I did was use a small Vodafone logo at the top right, and then I use a gradient tone of red. And instead of using the red color of the Vodafone logo, I use the same red as the critical state to a lighter one that it looked much better. And it was something like this. And I think, yeah, so it looked pretty cool. So I think creating your own corporate theme can make people kind of feel like the monitoring solution is also part of the company. So if you're working on a big corporate and you haven't created your own theme, I think you should be starting right now. It only takes 30 minutes. Okay, use case number 4, monitoring log files. What a nice topic, right? I've been wanting to talk about monitoring log files for a long time. How do you monitor log files? Our approach was kind of like this. A script will search for a pattern into a log file, and when it finishes reading it, it will save the last line read into a temporary file, and if and it will exit the way it had to do. If it has found a critical pattern, then it will exit 2. If it has found a warning pattern, it will exit 1. No pattern found, then exit 0. Okay, in the next execution, the first thing it will do, it will go to the last line read file and then start reading the log file from that line to the end, and then save that new last line read, overriding the previous value, and then it will exit the way it had to do. If it has found a critical pattern, then exit 2. If it has found a warning pattern, exit 1. No pattern found, exit 0. It seems like a good approach, right? Well, it is not. Because imagine that we are having an application with problems, and that application writes an error line in a log file, but does not keep on writing that line. So that line is only going to be find once. So in the next execution, it will change the state to 0. And with only 5 minutes, there are many chances that the operators, the people who is watching the console, will miss it. And even though if they don't miss it, if it changes to OK, they can think the problem is solved. But we all know that it's not solved at all. Why were we using this approach? Because when using Nagios, our console was HP OpenView. So that means it is an alarm console. And then when we changed to Icinga, we had a state console. So we needed to find a new approach. So I started searching in the internet, and I found check log files from console lab, Perl script. You know that script, right? No? I really like it. It has so many options. But the one that I really like the most is the sticky. With the sticky, you can set up how much time you want that script to keep exiting the same way once it finds a pattern. So just what I needed, but there was a problem. I couldn't make it work. But no surprise here, because my lack of scripting language, plus it was Perl. So let me tell you a story here. When I joined the monitoring team, so I was working with someone else, my pal Javito, who really was the one who did the migration from Nagios to Icinga. He thought it was a good idea to say that Vodafone Spain was using Icinga Web, but the boss was not so convinced. And well, he left by the end of 2015, and after some months, the boss did not tell me I shouldn't do it. Well, I just didn't ask him, but that's a short detail. And so I sent the testimonial to the web. And you know what happened? People working inside Vodafone from other countries start writing me emails asking me about Icinga. So I ended up talking often about monitoring with a guy from Czech Republic. By the way, in Vodafone, Czech Republic, they use Icinga too. And so this day that I was so stuck with the script, I thought about asking him. So this is our short conversation that day. Hi, Pavel Kuka. I hope you don't mind I share a conversation. And well, he gave me the hint to make the script work like I wanted. And so let's go to the breakdown. I was using checklog files script, and as this was inside the Unix server, I only had to add the command alias in the nrpe.cfg file, and then I had to define the service with the arguments and the assign rule, and then add the variable to the host definition. By the way, as you can see, we were using it to monitor Postgre database log file. And here you have the result. So now we use checklog files to monitor our log files. Okay, use case number 5, the Windows Console Certificate Monitoring Check. Do you know SCOM, the the Microsoft monitoring solution? God, every time I hear, this can only be monitored with SCOM, I roll my eyes. And that was exactly my case. Vodafone Spain wanted to monitor the dates for the different certificates that were installed in Windows BitTalk servers, and someone said it was only possible with Scrum. So I went to talk to my BitTalk pals and adjust them how they see the dates of the certificates. So they open a window, and yet another one, and another one, and I was like, no, but where's the command? And they stare me with big eyes and say, a command? What are you talking about? Remember when I said that I had user-level understanding of Linux, where I know less than that for Windows. When I was playing with this, I logged into a Windows 2012 server, and I didn't know how to log out. Anyway, of course, there was a command. You can use this PowerShell command with a pipe following asterisk, and you get all this data. So in the fields, not after and not before, you have the valid dates for that certificate. So I created a PowerShell script that would go to the different dates and then compare to the thresholds. And then I defined the command alias for that ns.ini file. Then I defined the service that with the arguments and the assign rule. Oh, this is a more fancy one. And then I added the variables in the host definition. And here you can see it. Well, you don't see much because it's an OK. So I'm sorry about that. OK. Use case number 6. This is the last one. Don't fall asleep yet, please. As I said before, in Vodafone Spain, we use IBM NQ technology as our message technology. But we needed to change from having triggers, brokers, clients, servers, to only have a couple of appliances, one in each data center, with a couple of queue managers inside of it that will manage all the queues. And we had a big challenge here because we had to monitor the appliances. And guess what? They are great and powerful black boxes. The only way you could log in into the appliances was using SSH, but there was no way to changing SSH keys, and of course not even thinking about installing any agent. So we were kind of stuck here until I found that there was a GitHub repo from the IBM people. And here they have some examples on how to interact with the appliances. And you know what they were using? They were using SPECT. I don't know if you know about SPECT. I learned what it was that day. SPECT is a kind of old interactive scripting language that some network admins used to use to configure routers and switches and so on. It's like the father of Ansible, kind of. So they were using SPECT scripts that were called by bash scripts, and I didn't want to use two scripts to do the same thing. So I put the small SPECT part of the script inside the bash script, and it went like this. With SPECT, it will open an SSH session to the appliance, and then it will wait for the appliance to ask for the login. Then you send the login, then wait for the password, then send the password. Then you enter to the advanced mode with MQ-CLI, and then you put the command that you need, in this case, the status of the high availability group. And what it was more interesting was that you can save the answer into a temporary file, and then you exit. So the rest of the bash script, it was to parse that file. So again, we have the checkMQ cluster script I create. Then you have to define the check command with the arguments needed. Then you have to define the service. And I added the assign rule with a variable in the host definition, and I added that variable in the host. And here you can see the result. Even though it's in Spanish, it's pretty easy to understand. No? It says, okay, the state of the cluster is online. Okay. The next example, we wanted to monitor the performance, and it was kind of similar to before, but you just use a different command that is status, and you save it. Okay, wait. And well, again, you use a script and you define a check command, and I guess I was in a hurry that day because I put everything in the same command line, but you can use it this way too. It works great. And then you have to define the service, and I was using the same variable, and it gets applied to the host. And this was the result. We were also monitoring the queue manager states and the queue states in every queue manager, and also the message age of every of the queues. But I didn't want to bore you too much, and I just haven't brought those examples. But if any of you are interested to know more about it, I'll be in the conferences this couple of days. So if you see me, you can ask me without any problem. And now that we are at the end of my talk, I don't know if I have been very quickly talking or not, but I want to tell you again, thank you, because I had a great time learning about monitoring, about scripting, about Icinga. And I kind of felt a little in depth with you. So the other day, I created my first project at Icinga Change, and I uploaded the Windows Console PowerShell script in case anyone would like to use it. So now I can say that I really feel part of the Icinga community. Thank you very much.
So we have some time for questions, if anyone has any question.
Hi. Have you thought about using SSH pass for login to the session instead of expect?
I'm sorry?
SSH pass. It's a wrapper around SSH, so you could use username and password.
Mm-hmm. I think we couldn't use it because of security reasons. The Unix team didn't let us use it. I think it was because of that.
Well, you use inspect.
I know.
It's the same way.
Yeah. But maybe we didn't explain ourselves better, and as long as it was in the GitHub repo, they, I guess, thought that it was the right way to do it. Okay. But once you use SSH key pass, can you interact also?
Yes, it's a wrapper around SSH. So it's multiple commands. Yes, no, only for the login part. Yeah. So you could pass username and password via file or via environment variable or something else, and then you have the login shell. So you don't need to make the login via expect.
You still need to do multiple commands. You need to escalate first, things like SUdo or something, and then you go another command. So you can't really expect anyone.
You could not pipe the commands and
Yeah. Okay.
We should discuss that. Just.
How many people were using the Icinga Web interface then? Because you said you were like at a certain moment the only person, and I think probably you were in charge of setting up everything, but then how many users did you have for the interface? And also, how did you separate responsibilities? Because in your presentation you said you had like the Citrix team, the storage team probably, and some other teams. How did everybody get all the alerts, or did you make it per group? But like maybe the storage on the virtual machine is going critical. Who got that alert? Was it the sysadmin in charge of the system, or was it the storage team? Because eventually they need to grow the storage.
Mm-hmm.
same question.
All the IT operations department had access to Icinga Web, and at least everyone in the company that would like to. And so we created roles for every team, and they could see the services that were that they administer. Okay, so Unix team could see all their alerts, and Bitstol teams only their services. And well, sometimes if the service was administered by someone, but it was important to someone else, that person could also see it. And then the operators also could go to the console, and then the technical people that was in level 1, that it was not from Vodafone, the outsourcing company that was resolving level 1 issues, they also could see the console and had their own role. And then I try to empower everyone to use the console. I mean, even that the administrators sometimes don't want to see it, the monitoring solution, I always try for them to understand what they were solving and what the operators were seeing, because if the administrator says that it's solved, but you can still see the critical, the operators won't close that ticket. So I always told them that they had to be sure that in Icinga there was okay, because otherwise it won't work. And I went to develop the new monitoring scripts with the people that was reading, asking me the scripts, because I mean the monitoring is for them, it's not for me. So I even put the same exact line that they needed, and if they needed a path to know that the problem is there, then I put the path. I mean, it's for them. Yeah.
Do we have any more questions? Yeah.
Hello. In such a big company, do you use some SCM like Git to store all the versions of your changes, or do you?
No,
no?
No, we did
and
not.
if you have to deploy a new version or something like that, it was a manual task, or?
Yes, we had a development environment, and we try things, and nothing too much, because in such a big company, we don't do so many changes. So that first and only upgrade that I made, it was a super challenge for me. It's all manually.
All right. So I would have one more question. Have you considered using some central logging management instead of checking log files, like Elasticstack or Graylog or something?
Yes, I did a demo in a pre-production environment, and with the Logstash, I was sending the alerts to Icinga, and it went really good. But we wanted such a small feature that having all that kind of elk stack for just monitor, I don't know, 150 log files, maybe it was not worth the. And well, Vodafone Spain is not like the most open source company. So all these changes were kind of difficult every time I had to explain it to the boss. So I did what I could.
All right, then thank you very much, Alba, for this presentation and these insights.
Okay, thank you.